today. I want to thank you all for coming out today. My name is Zach McKenzie. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit here in town called the Legacy Institute. We're a small nonprofit. We do mostly education projects in District 11 and District 2, but over the years we've also done a handful of what we call community development projects in downtown and in the Hillside neighborhood just off of downtown. And so what you'll hear today is kind of we'll work on a community visioning process related to Drake. We don't own Drake. I don't know how power works. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how to make any electricity. But Drake is such a big public asset downtown, and with the growth of downtown, I think us at the Legacy Institute, we just think it's a great opportunity that the city could have conversations with a lot of folks throughout Colorado Springs, because obviously utilities owns it, so it's a public asset, and then it does have a lot of impact on the Mill Street neighborhood, which is downtown, and there are just a lot of stakeholders. And sometimes in the past, I've lived here for about 20 years, sometimes in the past, conversations like this, they're never perfect, but they don't always include a wide swath of folks from different backgrounds, different parts of the community. And so about a year and a half ago, we engaged Dr. Pam Shockley-Zalvac, who used to be the chancellor of UCCS, just to help us facilitate those conversations. We partnered with the Downtown Partnership. We've got a lot of folks who've listened to a lot of people, and just appreciate you coming out and sharing your perspective today. As you'll hear today, we do not have any decision authority making. We're not decision makers, but what we are trying to do is just talk to as many people in kind of a structured process that Pam will talk about in a second, just so that we can put some of those voices together and maybe shut up at some point at the end of the year. So just again, appreciate your time today. Look forward to a great conversation. We've had a number of these, and they've all been pretty, insightful and polite and engaging. And even if people don't have the same opinions, they've just been good conversations to have. So with that, I will turn it over to Pam, and she'll kind of walk us through what we're going to be doing today.
All right, thank you, Zach. And I want to add my thanks for everyone coming today. And we're going to talk a little bit in the beginning, but then we're going to have you providing information for the reports that we'll be doing, and then getting them back to the community. So your ideas, what you think about some of the things we've heard. So, all right, objectives of the day. To give you an overview of what we have done to this point. Because we've had a lot of conversations, and some of the conversations were not as public as we would have liked because of this thing called COVID. We just got started, and then COVID shut down some of the community conversations we wanted. So we started again, and have been going in the last few weeks all over the community, inviting people to come and take a look at some of the things we have heard. You can see that briefly. So one of the objectives is to give you just a summary of what we've done. The second objective is to get your input on some possibilities. And Zach said very clearly, we are not the decision makers. We want to give this information to the decision makers, which is the Utilities Board and the City Council, saying this comes from the community, comes from the neighborhoods right around this particular coal plant. But this is not a decision about the coal plant being decommissioned. That decision was made long before this group was formed. This is to develop ideas about what might come next. And one of the things you're going to have the opportunity to say is, leave this with utilities to be used by utilities for some future use. Or what are some of the other possibilities that might be appropriate for this property? It's about 42 acres. So we're going to ask you and give you some things we've heard and seen, and let you respond to those. It's all those boards in the back. So you're going to be moving around during this session. We'll come back after you do that and have some general discussion. Okay, those are the objectives. The overview of the day is we're going to present a little bit of what we've been doing, what we found out, what we've looked at, and then we are going to give you a view of the Drake site I had not been on the Drake site at all until I started this process. I did not know what it looked like, and I don't know. How many of you have physically been on the Drake site? Several of you have. Well, that's more than I would have been on the Drake site. I have not been. I have now. It's kind of interesting, and it's bigger than I would have thought. I mean, most of us know the stacks, but most of us wouldn't see exactly what it looks like. Okay, let's do this. Are the introductions next, Chris? Is that?
I think we may have to over this.
Can we hop over the introductions? I want to introduce my team, or have them introduce everybody who's helping. And then we have some Drake Task Force members with us today. And these are some of the folks that the Downtown Partnership and the Legacy Institute asked to help us. These are citizen volunteers who've been helping us think through the last few months. So my team over here, let me start with you.
Hi there, I'm Caitlin Shinsky, and I'm helping out with the project. I'm really doing some of the, making sure that we're organized and ready to go for all our meetings.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sally Hibble, and in Japan's former lifetime, I worked with her on several of the projects at UCCS and have been part of some strategic planning processes in the nonprofit community.
Mark.
Good afternoon, my name is Martin Wood. My day job is working at UCCS. Today I'm on vacation, doing some private consulting. Thank you for all being here today.
Okay. Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Lieber. I'm with NES and supporting Pam in this process. I also serve on the task force.
Okay. Which task force? The Drake Vision Task Force, yes.
And I'm Jordan. I'm also with NES and just helping to pull some graphics together and some boards to give feedback.
I'm Katie, and I'm with NES, supporting Chris, and supporting Drake, and supporting.
Absolutely, a good member of the team. Okay, task force members, Mary.
I am Mary Sprummer, please.
Okay, Laura.
And I'm Laurie Diggett.
Okay, yes.
What's the task force? Is it
It's
task
just a
force
group of
associated with
citizens
the
that-
utilities? Does it
No,
have decision
no.
authority? What is it?
No, the task force is helping all of us listen and go out in the communities. You'll see all of the names in a minute. I was just introducing the people
I
who
understand. I
are here
just want to
today.
clarify. I didn't know if it was a task force at the utilities or the county commissioners or what,
No.
but it's.
We have no association. The utilities, the county commissioners, the council knows we're doing this. We are not associated with any of it. Okay, who's next?
Hi,
Bobby. Bobby,
I'm
that
on
was
the task force.
Bobby on the task force.
Yes.
All right, good enough. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, Mark.
Okay, well, to kick us off, let me kind of give you some background on when this all started. So, in the summer of 2020, I got a call from Panchuck Zelback. I was locked in my basement during COVID-19. And said, I have a project that I've been hired for people to be a part of. So I agreed to do it. Here's what I did. So up here, what you see are some case studies that I worked on. I worked on a variety of case studies of decommissioned plants around the world. And these are basically 5 examples up here. They're not all coal plants like Drake. For example, the one in Alexandria, Virginia is an electric generating plant. Denver Union Station isn't a plant at all. It was actually a train station that was decommissioned, and now it's a multimodal transportation center, hotel, retail, restaurants, that kind of thing. So what I learned during this process when I looked at all these different things is that communities have done a lot of really interesting, amazing things. And what they really are is a reflection of who they are as a community. And that's really why you're here today, as we've kind of gone through this process. But this project started, that led us up to today, almost 2.5 years ago. So a lot of work has been done. So Chris, if you go back to, or go to the next slide, I guess, because we flipped them around. So these are, the studies that I did on the power plants. Then what I did is I wanted to get some perspectives that came from a variety of different sectors. So what I did is I randomly picked individuals I did not pick CEOs and owners of companies. Some of them were, most of them were not. But I wanted to get different viewpoints on this idea of what can we do with Drake. So I looked at people from all sectors like small business, education, healthcare, tourism, the arts. I went across the whole kind of spectrum of areas of interest because I wanted to get a variety of different viewpoints and a variety of different opinions. So what I did, I took about 45 minutes to an hour with each person. And basically all I did was I introduced the project of Drake. I said, this is Drake, this is what's happened, it's been decommissioned, this is the footprint. At this point, it's a wide open book about what happens next. And that's the process we're beginning. So can you just spend some time with me talking about what you think would be a good thing to happen in Drake in the future? And as you imagine, I had 21, 22 interviews, and I had 21, 22 very different viewpoints and very different opinions and ideas about what should happen. As you will see here today, and you get back to these boards, that's what's reflected up there today. We also did a number of, I can't remember how many, Pam, but quite a few Zoom interviews with people in focus groups doing the same kind of thing, just to kind of introduce the idea, get some feedback, get some comments. We then turned to get the task force together, which you're going to learn about the task force here in a minute, which is one of the earlier questions. We also did a number of focus groups with the neighbors around Drake. So we took the Hillside community, we took the Mill Street community, and we did, I don't know, maybe the Sally, we did maybe 8 to 10, it feels like, different focus groups, different times of the day with folks. We did the same kind of thing. We said, okay, how do you feel about Drake? It's sort of in your backyard. It's now been decommissioned. Something's going to happen to it going forward. What are your thoughts? So again, the combination of what we learned, what I learned during the case studies, what we learned during the individual interviews, what we learned during the Zoom focus groups, and then what we learned from these neighborhood communities has really gotten us to a great extent to this point that we are today. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sally to talk about. Got any questions?
So the question of who is this task force, and as you know, we have 3 of our members of our task force here today. And just to remind you again that this is a citizens project, it is a listening project, it's a visioning project, and it's really being coordinated by Downtown Partnership and the Legacy Institute. So in their efforts to get some guidance on how we should proceed with this process and this input, they put together a task force. So these are the members of the task force, and they represent private business, they represent the downtown area, they represent the local neighborhoods that are closest to Drake, they represent nonprofit communities. So these are the individuals that are serving to guide this process. And when we are done with this part of the work, we will take all of the information that we have gathered, we will take it back to this task force, and they will be putting together a report for consideration to the authorities, primarily City Council and the Utilities Board. Next. As Martin mentioned, a lot of this and what you are experiencing and part of what you're participating in today has really been driven by our listening sessions with the smaller focus groups in the neighborhoods closest to Drake, primarily Hillside and Mill Street. And we had those focus groups in Greenway Flats and at the Hillside Community Center. What we heard from those focus groups and what we had gathered in the individual meetings that Martin conducted, as well as the case studies, helped drive some guiding principles, but it also made us go and seek a larger group, so we had a very large charrette with a group of stakeholders as well, and they again helped bring us to this point today. So we are in phase 2 of this process. Thank you for being a part of it and for being here today. And as part of what we are doing now with these listening sessions, we are also making sure that we are doing a lot of due diligence With the work that has already been done, as you might expect, there are many plans and reports that already exist that are out there, and we need to make sure that whatever is recommended as a final report from the task force is in alignment with those existing plans. So we are looking at downtown experience, arts vision 2030, and plan COS. And there's a huge transportation plan. We're looking at all of that information that already exists to make sure that whatever is recommended would align with what is already in existence. We are now developing, and part of what you will be experiencing today and participating in today is based on all of the individual interviews and the focus groups and the task force. We're trying to develop different scenarios to get response from the community. And as Pam already shared, the first scenario is to do nothing, and then we will ask you to respond to a lot of other ideas and different scenarios that have been proposed from the work that we have already done. We will then develop recommendations with the task force to take to the decision makers, being City Council and the Utilities Board. We will vet those recommendations with the task force and again, make sure that they are in alignment with plans that already exist. And then we will make those presentations or make those recommendations to the decision makers. And we are very transparent that this is a citizens project. By participating in it today, we want you to know that we will share back everything that we have heard. Yes?
I just have one question for clarification. It's my understanding, so please clarify if I am incorrect, but isn't the city council the actual board of the Colorado Springs Utilities?
Yes.
Okay, so my recommendation would be a slash instead of and. You make it sound like there are two subsets of people at a high level that are looking at this, when in reality we have 5 or 6 people that are going to make a decision.
Great.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, and yet it's an odd thing. But the utilities board votes and then makes a recommendation to the city council, which is exactly the same group of people.
Right,
But I know,
ridiculous.
I didn't do it.
I know, but it's not the way it should be
No,
said.
I understand. I agree with you. I think you're right. But
We don't have anybody overseeing
Yeah.
our city council. They can run wild and do what they want.
Yeah.
Not
Let me
good.
ask people, why is the presentation put like this then?
What? I didn't hear the question.
The NES people are the ones who put the presentation together, right?
No, we did. I will take responsibility for the presentation.
Okay, then can we change that?
Sure.
So it's slash
Yeah,
and
they're
not
one and the
the
same. When they're one and the same, it certainly,
It
it misleads people to believe that there are two actual boards that are going to be coming together, convening and making decisions, when in reality it's one board. And that changes everything.
They do vote twice, and
It doesn't matter. They're not going to go one way in one board and one way in another. That's
actually,
not going to happen.
they have voted differently in the intervening times. They have. It has changed from one
Well, is
day.
that because there's a different literacy? And then which one makes the first decision?
Hang on,
City
let's not
council
get
or-
too sideways, just finish your thing.
Yeah, utilities makes the first decision,
Or the
and then city.
utility board makes a decision, they make their recommendation, and
That's
the
right.
city council
Right.
is going to
Right,
hear.
but that
what
is,
the
yeah, but that is not anything we have.
Yeah.
Right, okay. All right, we'll go on.
No, that's okay. I think what we would also like you to know, and as part of this and participating in this, is that again, we are making these recommendations, but we ultimately do not have the authority to make that decision. Okay? So with all of that, Pam, I think I'll let you go ahead and go through these guiding principles.
Right. The task force, after listening to everyone, has to this point come up with 4 guiding principles, and they're going to be back here. You're going to have, and we would hope that there will be decisions multiple decisions over the next several years about Drake. Likely. And over the next several years, we're hoping that the city council will adopt some principles as an overarching framework. Now, what we want to do today is tell you what we as a task force to this point are thinking. And then we're going to ask you, do you agree or not? And that's going to be part of, and we'll talk about how you're going to do that in a moment. If you agree, you're going to put a green dot. If you disagree, you're going to put a red dot. But you're going to have a way of explaining that also. Because that's how we're listening. We can't go around the room and scribe everybody's individual wordsmith.
Do the task force, excuse me, do the task force people also vote? Because over half of what's in here is
No.
already in your group.
No, they do not get to vote.
Okay.
Nope, and I know who they are, and they cannot vote. And they're not over half. There's only 3 of them in the room.
No,
and our
all
staff.
the people
No.
connected to what you
No,
have is
no, they do not get to vote. No. And anybody who has been here before to another meeting does not get to vote twice. No. Darn. I mean, no, I'm kidding. I would not know that necessarily. So, people, we value the dignity of all people for an inclusive, welcoming, and collaborative place. In other words, Drake site should be a welcoming place, whatever is on it. Design. We value design that honors the surrounding neighborhood's character while being both bold and ambitious and befitting the heart and soul of our community. Environment. We value the environment by being stewards of the setting, restoring and sustaining the water, the land, air, and life. And then economics. We value economics with a commitment to financial equity, feasibility, and long-term sustainability. In other words, it has to work financially. We want it to work financially. Now, we want you to tell us in a few minutes whether you agree or disagree with these guiding principles. We want people to be considered. We want design issues to be considered. We want the broader environment to be considered. And we want the economics of the development to be considered so that it can be done and it can sustain itself once it is done. Okay, next slide. Now, let's take a look at Drake. This is Drake today. I'm going to sit down. Just going to play a little video. Watch that in particular. That video, just to give you kind of an orientation to where it is. Okay, Chris. So let's look again at some other slides. This is everything that is around it. The railroad tracks, the Mill Street neighborhood, Motor City, the interstate, Fountain Creek, America the Beautiful Park, the Olympic and Paralympic Museum, Widener Field, downtown, police department. You see Memorial Park over there, Monument Valley Park, West Side neighborhood, Highway 24, the Humane Society, that Walmart Supercenter that sits over on this side, Motor City Drive, and then that existing substation. And I'm going to name that right now. The existing substation is going to remain. The cost to take those power lines under the creek and the interstate is reportedly over $1 billion. We simply cannot afford it. So that existing substation will remain for the foreseeable future, meaning a long time. Yes?
You know, the character of Colorado Springs is, we have the most famous mountain in the world, Pikes Peak, and the view of Pikes Peak is definitely an asset.
It's a tremendous asset. Yeah. It just, yes, because it's looking right at Pikes Peak. It's a gorgeous view, no question about that. We're trying to give people a sense of what is around it. The view is absolutely spectacular. You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, next question. Pardon me?
The two holding ponds, or what are those on the southern edge of the?
Just this direction of the substation.
Yeah, just south of the substation. There's those two holding ponds.
Chris,
Yes, there are a couple of holding ponds, and of course, those were part of the function of the power plant that was generating power by using coal. So that is, yes, indeed, part of the footprint.
Okay, what percent are we talking about? If holding ponds and the substation are remaining in the 40-some acres?
Just the substation, just the part that says the existing substation remains. Theoretically, everything in the white can be redeveloped, including those holding ponds.
You know how large that is?
Pardon me? Yes, 42 acres.
And what?
So my question is, are the larger developers in the city trying to purchase this?
There is no decision about that at this time.
Do you know if any of the developers have put in contracts or?
They have not.
Okay, they have not.
Now, I am not speaking for larger or smaller developers in the city or outside of the city.
Okay.
This process is what the citizens would like to see as a part of
Right.
redevelopment. And that precedes, because we are several years in advance of it being able to be redeveloped, because the mitigation must take place first. And that's the wisdom of having a citizens' input process that is not binding, but is important.
We're not dealing with the situation of the Mesa, are we? What, you said mitigation. Is there going to be any areas that are going to be ground off limits going forward?
All right, not that we know of at this point. We, at one point, before we started the public input process, I asked, should we go forward? Because I did not want to go forward with this part of the process if we weren't going to be able to go forward, period, because that seemed a waste of time.
How old is this plant?
27.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't remember the years.
Yeah.
Not bad. But that means you're probably not just talking mitigation, you probably have some abatement issues.
Units 1, 2, 3, and 4 were in building approximately before.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Unit 1 was built in the 20s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unit
But we do know, since it was a plan, what has been used and what hasn't been used in terms of the chemicals.
I'm not just talking chemicals, building material.
No, I know. Yeah,
It doesn't
I
matter.
know.
I got you.
Yes.
Just one more clarification on the actual property itself. The railroad lines that run through, Do those have to stay as is, or would there potentially be
No,
something?
there's
that could be-
potential for alteration
Okay.
of anything in the white on that slide.
Okay.
Okay,
The
next
railroad
slide.
line inside the unit, inside
Next
the
slide.
grounds.
Now, this,
This is
just
for-
for the history,
It is a spur.
this is 1956. We think it hasn't changed over time, but it really has. Look how much larger it is today than it was in 1956. Okay, next slide. Now, site funding possibilities. This would not be everything. But then we've talked now, and in addition to the focus groups, Susan Edmondson from the Downtown Partnership and I, and Caitlin actually, attended community meetings of community residents that weren't exactly focus groups, but we went around to homeowners meetings and other sorts of things in the gardens. These are the general kinds of ideas that have come from all of the input to date. Now, the focus groups that we did on Zoom have one major limitation. And it was the only way we could do them at the time because it was the lockdown period of COVID. But you had to have internet accessibility to get onto them. We weren't limiting who could be a part of them, but you couldn't come to a community center and join them. So I think they had a bias of knowing Zoom and having internet in your home. So that's why we wanted to do a lot more focus groups once things opened up, and we did. So but community centers of some sort, housing, and housing was stressed over and over again, multi-levels of housing, not all high income, not all low income, multi-levels, multi-income levels of housing should be in this program. Environmental innovation, that once you are, a lot of people, it's amazing the number of people who said, we are decommissioning a coal plant, let's do something environmentally interesting in its place. Work experience, this one is one of the harder ones to define. Post-COVID, are people going to go back to work in tall buildings? Are people going to go back to work in buildings? Or are they going to work at home and go to other kinds of workplaces? What is the workplace going to look like? So what kind of work experiences would we get? What kind of outdoor activities? One of my most fun inputs, I was doing a table in Leon Young Park. And I had about 15 teenagers come to give their input. What the teenagers want and what their parents and grandparents want is not the same thing. I'm voting with the teenagers, by the way. But no, not necessarily, although I love them because they were so committed to their community. And they loved their community. Yeah, and it was great. But they are all about more outdoor activities near their areas. Water destinations. The flow, right by Drake, has, and that's just the natural flow of the creeks, has the most potential for outdoor recreation activities. Pedestrian experiences, and then mobility options. Talking about how do we want to get around? And that is everything from transportation studies to how do we want to think about transportation in the future. Now, what we're going to do, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sally, we're going to have on all of the boards in the back, we're going to have, you're going to have dots, you're going to have more dots than you've ever thought you needed in your life. But you're also going to have an other ideas board. We are going to collect every other ideas and put this in the report. And one of the things I'm going to say to you is this final report, after we give it to the decision-making city council, will be on the Legacy Institute and the Downtown Partnership website. So you will have an opportunity to see it, and that will include the case studies, and it's going to be long. But it also will reflect ideas that may have come from only one person. Because valuable ideas, this is not always a majority of the people in the room. So your ideas will be included. Now, the boards are all of these possibilities. They are not Colorado Springs. Some of them came from the case studies. Some of them came from the task force members' input, but they are not Colorado Springs deliberately. Because we don't want you to say, well, I don't like that in Briargate, or I don't like that in Mill Street, or I don't like that in this part of town, or I don't like that on the west side. Because that is not what this is about. It's what appeals to you and what you absolutely don't want. Because we also know that there are some things we absolutely shouldn't do. There is a board back there with the 4 guiding principles. We want you to say, if you agree in general with the principle, you'll put a green dot. If you don't agree, you'll put a red dot for all 4. But if you want to wordsmith it, you'll give us a sticky note that gives us a wordsmithing change. Because there may be a word that you don't like. You agree with it in general, but you don't like the word. Somebody the other day had a word that they just could not stand, and they needed to define it differently, and that's fine. So we truly are listening, and that is going to create something. Because there's another thing that we do want to say. It's a powerful process when you can take to a city council or to a government authority an independent citizens listening process that truly does not come from a preconceived agenda. I do not know as an individual what should be done with Joe. I know that I want to run an honest process, honest to what you are telling us. And that's what we're trying to do. Yes.
I have one more question. Will the general public be given, I recognize that report will go to the city council. Once that report has been released to them, will the general public actually be able to see that report as well?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to see.
On websites, we do not have the resources to print it.
Okay.
It will be on the Downtown Partnership and the Legacy Institute website.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, it will. Because the case studies alone are quite lengthy. And yes, it will not be in a printed version because it's just too expensive.
Thank you.
Yes, as in general, it was paid for the expenses for the task force, for the Legacy Institute. And for
The Legacy Institute and the Downtown Partnership boards have funded the project in its entirety.
Yeah, but the Legacy is a nonprofit, so somebody has to be paying for the Legacy as well. So is that coming from the Downtown Partnership?
No, the Downtown Partnership, no, the Legacy Institute has its own nonprofit funding. And Zach,
Yep.
do you want to answer?
Yeah, just a mix of grants and donations.
From the Downtown Partnership? Right?
No.
The
So
legacy.
we're actually, so we don't receive any funding from downtown, we don't give any funding to downtown.
No, it's just 2 different
Yeah. So it is
nonprofits.
I've done a lot of these boards. I know that they're very expensive, so I'm just trying to find out what primary group is paying for this. Is the City of Colorado Springs Utilities,
No.
the City
There's
Council?
not one dime from any city organization in this project.
I have a question.
Yes.
From the previous meetings that you have had all over, is there a tendency of what people want to see?
I think there is beginning to be a tendency, and we will report that in the final report.
Sure.
So you'll be able to see what you thought versus what others thought.
I guess a question within the question is for Mrs. Martin, that gentleman. He did his research based on different projects
That have been completed, yes.
So besides Union Station, what we know,
Yeah.
very successful, what the other projects ended up as?
Right. They all ended up, and that will be in the report. We selected projects that had been successful.
Yeah.
We did not want to learn from well, you want to learn from
Yeah.
projects that fail. You do. You want to
Yes.
learn why they failed. But we wanted to see what were some alternatives from projects that had been successful.
So they were similar to Union Station, which was preserve a historic building and
No,
have a really
not
successful.
necessarily. They were very different.
Yeah, the projects were all unique and very different. And I would say that if I had to pick one mistake that was made on a number of the projects, it was the lack of what we're doing here today. They did, I mean, Denver Union Station is a good example. Denver Union Station did not engage their neighborhoods early on in the process, and then it got pretty brutal towards the end of the process, and they had to go back and redo a bunch of different things. So we did learn our lesson from studying some of these case studies to figure out you got to engage the community at the very beginning, and you have to get opportunities for the entire community to weigh in.
Okay.
Do you guys know the character who Martin Drake was? Like, the guy who had this vision for the power plant? Like, it'd be sort of cool to find out. Do you know?
Which I guess is my question, is this of any historical value to it? Is it that we deem
Yeah,
a historical
that'd be
sign
neat.
within the church?
Not, we asked that question, the task force asked that question, and the answer is there are a few artifacts that will be preserved and will not be demolished that do have, but most of it is already gone on the inside, right, Robbie? Is that what we learned when we toured?
Question. Is there anybody from Drake here in the room? I heard you, I didn't know if you introduced someone, I missed it.
I don't know if
Ownership
there
board,
is.
task force, anything?
No, we're not from Drake.
What?
You mentioned earlier, someone mentioned earlier, there's several other
What?
project ideas, you know, people taking different approaches to what should people have. Can you tell us about who some of those others are? I mean, I would like to hear what they're thinking, not just this organization.
Oh, there.
What are some of the other proposals or early thoughts that people are having, and what organizations or what people I'd like to be able to contact them?
Yeah, there's not another organized effort of which I am aware of.
About the utilities, is there someone
Well,
there you
there
know
are
of?
plannings. You can certainly contact the
Yeah,
utilities.
you
I don't
know
have,
someone?
do we have,
Contact name at
Caitlin,
utilities?
do we have a contact
Looking
name
at
to refer questions to the utilities? I think we do.
We do, yeah.
Okay, you want to give that?
I will grab that, yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just grab his email.
Okay. Yes.
On your map that you showed the area around there, there were four things, I-25, I think you did have identified, the Marion House on the north, the Salvation Army, and then the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission.
Yes.
Play a prominent part in
They
that
absolutely
makeup
do.
of that neighborhood.
And they've all been involved in our
I understand
conversation.
that, but they're not going anywhere.
Right.
They should, in my opinion, be identified and have spending time both business-wise and personal in that neighborhood. There's a lot of influence that is
That's
why
right.
those three.
And they have
Service
all been in the
institutes.
focus groups and in
Maybe
the
abnormal
discussions.
amount of power.
Yeah.
Chris, can you pull up that slide actually looking forward?
Going back.
No, going forward.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is what, yes, they are very near. And this is what we're talking about. This kind of looks at what would be a massing of potential development on the side. But I'm hearing what you're saying. It's just we could not put every single location, but those three that you mentioned were absolutely in our input process.
So it has a day-to-day, hour-by-hour impact in that neighborhood.
It does.
From everything from the businesses that are located there, to the new businesses, to the museum that's there, to all the services, its impact. And they're making millions of dollars of investment in those three facilities, and they're not going anywhere soon.
You mentioned housing as one of those possibilities, and you said, you know, it could be a high-rise, it could be low-rise, luxury, non-luxury. Is there a way to recommend or suggest that please no more cheap apartments? We're filling out the city with cheap and apartments with no architectural features, nothing. So is there a way that this could be preserved against
You
that?
can do that right now, in what we're getting ready. You can make a specific comment, and you can vote against some of the things you've just said, because they're in the choices that you can vote on. Absolutely. Yes.
Have they determined how long the phase 2 is going to take on that?
Not till we get the environmentals complete.
It's not, phase 1's not that.
No.
So will they zone these pretty different, or will they zone other areas?
That remains to be seen. I don't. Okay, we are going to have to, in order to complete your task, and then you can come back and ask more questions. But in order to complete your input task, you're going to have to go. So Sally, we'll talk about the voting one more
Can I
time.
get the contact name of the utilities?
She'll give you, she's getting it for you.
Well,
I don't-
some other people might.
we'll do it, but I want to get the voting going, and we will, I promise you. We're going to give you an email at the end, and we'll give you that email or contact information. We will.
So again, based on all of the listening and all of the focus groups and review of case studies, everything, we've broken ideas down into several categories. You'll see these boards behind you. And what we're asking you to do is, if something really resonates with you, if it looks like something that really excites you in the category of water, then put a green dot on it. And you can do that up to 4 on each board. So 4 green dots on each board. Green is go, so green is positive. If there is absolutely some image on the board that you're like, please do not do any more of this in this category, then vote with a red dot. If you see nothing on the board that looks anything like anything you would like to see down there, you don't have to vote. But please don't vote more than 4 green and 1 red per board. And then we want to make sure that you look at the value statements and vote either yes, no on those and say, yes, these absolutely make sense, because those are really driving the conversation. So we would like your input on those. And then just remember that, again, you have a vote to say yes, utilities should just make all the decisions and they can retain it and do whatever they want with it, or not. So that's a yes, no vote on the utilities board. And then finally, again, anything that you don't see represented at all, or questions that you have, or clarifications that you would like to offer, just write it down on the sticky note and put it on the board. We are recording all of those notes and making sure that that's included when we give this information back to the task force.
So we can't just vote no to a whole board if we want to put a red dot.
If you don't want, if there's nothing on that board that is anything that you would like to see, you do not have to vote on it at all. You can put your red dot on it, but if you want to say, please don't do anything with housings, or please don't do anything with water, whatever, you can add that in your comments.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay. I just need one more clarification, I'm sorry. The way that you presented the information about the utilities company retaining it and doing something with utilities related for future purposes is one statement. I want to make sure that that's accurate and not that we just do nothing, give it to the utilities board and they can do whatever they want to do with it. Sell it to developers, do whatever they want. So can you clarify that for me? Because I need to understand what...
The intent is that they would keep it as a utilities facility, because everything else is developed. Everything else is developed. So if you want it developed, then you would do
this stuff.
This stuff.
And if you don't want it developed and you want it left
Just
so
say
that it
as
would
a
be used for
utilities
utilities because we're being
site.
influxed with people, okay. That's right.
So it's not a total foregone conclusion. It's not been totally stamped as done? I feel dumb, but I didn't go to those meetings because I was doing
No,
other
it isn't
things.
stamped as done.
It is?
No.
Oh, it is not. Thank you. Then I know who's right.
The coal part.
The coal part is done.
Right.
That,
They're not gonna go back and do coal.
But they could put up a neighborhood nuclear facility.
Yeah, no.
Well, they are putting in 6
No, I'm bonding with your
natural
stuff.
gas power plants there now.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, there's too much stuff.
I just got my Colorado Springs Utilities brochure in the mail this morning and read it. They have already installed 6 modular units running on natural gas. At
Okay.
some point, when they prepare sites around town, they'll distribute some of those. I think I read 4 will be distributed and 2 will remain here. All right, but, so,
But in the
that's already
future-
been done.
In the future, if this is left as a utilities area, they could put up small nuclear, they could put up thermal, they could put
I
up.
think, yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I haven't had any discussion of that.
I have with the president, or the manager.
Manager,
Okay, all right, we need to start this process. That's
We gotta
true.
go. We gotta go.
That's not in our purview.